Welcome to Outwitting the Manipulator, the podcast that gives you powerful techniques to protect yourself as a manipulation is taking place. Now here are your hosts, authors and communication experts, Robin Golinski and Dr. Dennis Becker.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back. I'm Dr. Dennis Becker, and you'll hear in just a moment or so my colleague, Robin Golinski. Robin, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
There you go. Okay, that's enough. You're done for the day, Robin. Okay,
I don't
thank you.
being told what to do, but I'll do it.
We have a special guest with us today. And, you know, the interesting thing about it is in the introduction, we talked about communication and manipulation, of course, which is our favorite topic. Don't we love it, kids? And we have somebody with us today who's a special guest who is speaking about manipulation. He himself has not been in the news, but what he does, boy, has it been in the news. So we're so glad to have today our special guest, David Yas. And David is the owner, founder, and driving force behind a podcast called the Boston Podcast, which I'm going to ask him about in just a minute. Anyway, welcome. Look at that. He puts applause in for himself. That was great. He manipulated the sound, folks. There we go. We're right on time. Hey, David.
I was hoping you'd say that, Dennis. Yes, thanks for having me, and kick it off with some manipulation since I proudly produced this show for you. I'm able to slip in sound effects where I feel like it. So beware.
That's great. Well, we're really glad to have you here because David, I hate to put this on you, David, and I don't mean, Dave, that you have to really accept this, but Dave is in the media business. And, you know, the media has been a target for several years now, being fake and manipulative and all that kind of sweet stuff that's been said about the media. So we're delighted to have you, Dave, and talk a little bit about that sort of topic as well as other things. So, Robin, would you like to lead us off with Dave this morning or this afternoon or whenever folks are hearing it? So go ahead.
Sure. You brought up the media, but I'm more interested in Dave telling this. Well, we could do both, but I would love to hear the story that you have with your business partner first.
Sure. Yeah.
And then we can talk about AI or whatever.
Yeah. I had a situation it's now about 8 to 10 years back, where the short version of the story is I was working for a guy who ran this networking company, and I had a falling out with him and ended up departing the company. And I then founded the Boston Podcast Network, and everybody lived happily ever after. However, at the time, what happened was I was basically this guy's, one of two employees, I guess, but I came in proposing the deal to him that I would help him build this networking organization. And since I had been the publisher of Massachusetts Lawyers Weekly for 15 years, I had a pretty extensive network, if for nothing else, just from being around for so many years. I knew a lot of lawyers, the type of people that he'd like to try to get into this networking organization. So I did. I brought in like 300 members. At some point, he decided that he didn't need me, or maybe just didn't like my style or something, which is his prerogative. It's it's business, and if he wants to get rid of me, he can get rid of me. But there was, in my opinion, some manipulation along the way, and it started by him proposing a new scheme as to how I would work for him. This very detailed plan, which he said is just a new way of doing things. But if you read between the lines, it was clearly a demotion. So that's probably, the first point where I said to myself, what's going on here? So he could have
being there I don't mean to interrupt you, David, but we've said many times the key being there, you had to read between the lines. And we've been urging all of our listeners to read between the lines, pay attention, look at the details. Something happened there, right, Dave?
Yeah, it is very sort of unsettling at times I thought, am I being paranoid? Because it's, we were we treat each other like peers, but I worked for him. And, so there's a little bit of element there that I was going to sort of take my meat and potatoes that was served to me and say, okay, thank you. I'll go out and work. I wish in hindsight, I wish he just said, it's just not working out. Can you leave, or can we work out something where you eventually leave? But he didn't say that. He had this whole complex thing. And in my opinion, I was being set up to fail. The goals were far more aggressive than anything we had seen before. There was like a slight title change. There were all these things that said, I can't see how this is good for me. He said, no, we're going to grow the organization together. So there were other things along the way, and I eventually sort of called him on it. And there were some third parties brought in, others that were involved in the organization to more or less mediate what was going on. And, he said to me, I said, it certainly feels like I'm getting set up to be fired, because I've fired people before, and this is what you do before you fire them. You get something down on paper that you can then later say, well, look, you knew what the game was. And so just sort of masking the fact that I was being set up to fail. And so he said, no, I would never fire you. And this is kind of the heartbreaking moment. He extended his hand to me and said, I would never fire you. I wouldn't do that to you.
Oh, right.
So at this meeting, it became clear to those in the room that the relationship was broken. And, someone said, Dave, why don't you work the rest of this year? It was something like 4 months remaining in the calendar year. And so I said, you know what, that makes sense. So we worked out a deal, put it all down on paper, worked for the final 4 months under these conditions, and then gracefully depart. And so I didn't want to leave, but, like I said, at the end of the day, it was his company. And I thought, if I'm going to leave, this is a good way to leave. And plus, it gives me 4 months to figure out what I'm doing next.
Sure.
Well, something like 4 to 6 weeks later, he sat down with me and said, you know what, I think you should leave now.
Oh, my.
And I said, what? And he said, well, your numbers are way down. There was 1 month where the productivity had slipped, but it was not anything that drastic. And also the agreement that we came up with, which it's just an agreement for these 4 months, just let me hang for 4 months. It had these penalties built in that if production slipped, I got paid less. So I said to him, you wrote down in this agreement that if production slipped, then I get paid a little bit less on my bonus, and I did. And now you're saying you're going to fire me for this? And what's going on? We agreed to this. Wow, he clearly, now I don't know everything or anything that went on behind the scenes, but he just couldn't. I guess he couldn't stand that I was still working for him and still earning money, and so it was unsettling. There was I kind of felt like, if I want to go Shakespearean, I felt like Caesar with people conspiring all around me. It just felt that, and that's a real gut punch kind of thing. Throughout my career, I've had good bosses, bad bosses, but for the most part, I've succeeded, and it was just very humbling to be told that I was needed to go, So, and there's personal feelings mixed into it, as well as it was just me working alongside this guy for so many years, and it made me wonder, how long has he been trying to get rid of me, without telling me. So then it was a mess, and I'll be honest, it set me back in my professionally. It took me kind of years to recover from it. One, because it hurt. Two, just because logistically, you go almost 4 months without a paycheck, you're behind the 8 ball. I don't know,
Sure.
too many among us can say, oh, I won't make any money. And great, I tried to find another job, but it was just, I was kind of shell shocked a little bit by the whole thing.
Yeah. So that's one of the not really a side effect, the direct effect in many ways, that you
It's the
become shell
cost
shocked.
of
This is
it's the
something that
cost.
debilitates you. It makes you feel bad in many ways. And in addition to the pragmatic part about you're not making money, how do you live? I mean,
Right.
this is one of the side effects that, and sometimes not so side effect, a direct effect of manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Yeah.
interesting to me that you said it was a heartbreaking moment because it is shocking, I think, to most people who haven't experienced manipulation before to have that kind of sincerity, to feel as though somebody really means what they say, looked you in the
Yeah.
eye, shook your hand,
Right. Right.
and you being a person who would never do that and not mean it, cannot fathom that somebody could do that. So the first time for everyone, I think, when they have that experience, it's almost it's hard to.
Yeah. It kind of turns your world upside down. And
It
I know
does.
you've
They lose
had,
faith in humanity.
you do. Because there are some things that you kind of think you can count on, that people won't, lie directly to your face, that people who you seemingly have a good relationship for years, all of a sudden have a weird turn. And I know you've had plenty of examples of that on this podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, I can think of a couple that don't involve me where, I had an aunt who, she, long story short, she co-owned a house with some friends. It was a summer house, and she got sick. She was diagnosed with a form of cancer. Now, I'm very happy to say she's still kicking and has beaten the health scare. But at the time, it looked like she was headed for a crisis. And she went to her friend and said, I need to, I'm not going to work for a while. I need money. I got to sell my share in this house that we co-own. And the person resisted at first, and then just kind of broke off communication and said, talk to my lawyer. And this was her dear friend. This is her dear friend. And so I know you've had, and I've heard examples also in partnerships and law firms where all of a sudden someone you thought you knew just turns against you. And I don't know if you guys have a theory as to why that happens. Maybe we never knew the person as well as we thought in the first place.
I think that's it, Dave. I think that there's a blind spot, and there are signs. Like, if you really, I'll ask you, to think about going back. Usually hindsight's 20/20. Going back, were there red flags? Were there things that happened that made you that tipped his hand? Because what I see when you tell the story about the guy is he saw you had something he wanted, a network that he wanted.
Yeah.
So he got that from you, and then your usefulness was zero to him. So he had to get rid of you.
Yep.
This is the way a manipulator thinks. It's very much, win, lose. What can I get? Okay, now you're worthless to me. Oh, you're great, but now you're not. And they're just very callous that way. And it's really hard for people to believe that can be true with a human being. But until you experience it firsthand, you realize it. I believe that there are signs along the way. And I think I just want to add this here, and we should do a whole podcast on this. There's a book called On Human Nature. I think it's called, by Robert Greene. I have listened to the chapter about envy 3 times. I can't get enough of that one chapter because he talks about envy in there, about how there's a certain kind of envy that's very dangerous. So this person will appear as though they adore you. They think you're fantastic, but they've got this hidden secret envy where they want to be you. And it comes out in this very unhealthy way. And so it leaks. If we're listening closely for behaviors, we're listening closely for word choice, for things that are a little bit odd, they do leak it out. So I would ask you, that was a long build up to the question of, did you see any of that when you go back?
Well, there was at least one obvious thing that I should have picked up on because at some point during my first year of working for the guy, he wrote me what he called a quarterly evaluation, and it was poor, and I was pretty shocked. Now, maybe I should have said this at the outset. There are two sides to every story, and he would tell the story very differently, I'm sure. But the things that I was being criticized for were kind of like administrative things and what seemed like nitpicking things to me. And it was the worst of employee evaluation I had ever gotten. And what I said to him was, I've brought in, hundreds of members in this organization. You don't have anything in this evaluation that gives me credit for anything I do.
There you go. Red flag.
Big time. And in hindsight, I sort of swallowed my pride and told him I'll work harder. Whatever. And then, a year went by and I figured we had gotten by that, but I should have known at the time. It was so out of left field, and he said, well, Dave, I'm not a pleaser. You can ask my wife. I just don't give out a lot of compliments. And I said, well, if you're my boss, it's kind of your job to tell me what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. Can we agree to that? And I don't know. I forget what he said, but
well, that is a huge red flag. And what that told him. So when he first did that to you, you gave him an enormous amount of information about how you're wired, how you're motivated, and how he could manipulate you further.
Yeah, I think that's right. And
Robin, you mentioned something earlier that I want to put a title to. Dave, you may have been a target of what we call cognitive regeneration. Now, what that means is that the manipulation that's taking place is unlike other manipulation tactics where it's obvious: gaslighting, love bombing, blaming, name calling, these kind of things. This is where this goes back to the point that you made earlier, Robin. Somewhere he picked up an envy, a jealousy of you. You worked with him, and people who have this kind of manipulative approach, they want to be seen as the smartest person in the room. And what they do is they create situations, work situations, perhaps sometimes personal things, which make them look smarter than you. And when he was your boss, he couldn't allow you necessarily, because of this condition, he couldn't allow you to be better looking, better, smarter, user, creator, all of that. So what did he do? He had to give you negative things or not give you positive things, because the more positive things would have made him look more negative.
Yeah. I'm definitely better looking than him. I mean, it's just not.
That alone is a reason. It could be.
But it's funny how you both picked up on that though, and this is why you're so good at what you do, because I think it's easy for me to say, well, he's just jealous, but there was definitely some of that, because I think the way he perceived me was I was the people person that could walk into a room and glad hand everyone and have everyone come up to me and have a nice smile and a nice little moment. Mm-hmm. But in his mind, I wasn't doing the real work that it was required to make this organization go. And in fairness, I have my weaknesses like everybody else, and like organization and staying on top of details. Sometimes I struggle with that. And so, but he didn't like I think he probably didn't like the fact that I was just, I walked between the raindrops. I was Mr. Charming and all that. So.
Oh, absolutely. Because that's power. There's a power in that. And he could not have you looking like you were more likable than him. It looks like you're in charge when you do that, when you're that person. My favorite metaphor for this is a helium balloon, because on day 3 after the birthday party, how the balloon is just hovering like at halfway. So the manipulator doesn't want you on the ground totally disabled, because that makes them look bad. But they definitely don't want your balloon at the top, like floating above them. So they're constantly adjusting what they say and do with you to keep you in this middle way where they can control you.
Yeah. It's actually a popular manipulative tactic, particularly amongst people who are or who perceive themselves to be in a senior leadership position, whether they are the founder or they are the boss, or technically you report to them or whatever, but they see them, and sometimes it doesn't have to be stature or position. They just see themselves as smarter, whether it's a better looking or better at the job or all of those, better at meeting people, as you say. This is a cognitive jealousy. So they do almost anything to make you feel, like Robin said, you're sort of like there in your work, but you're not quite at your best, but you're not the worst. So they can
Well,
still use you. This is a form of manipulation, to be sure, Dave.
there's a difference between jealousy and envy. The envy is dangerous because jealousy is, I wish I had what you have. Envy is, I want to be you. So it's much more insidious and much more dangerous. And being able to spot envy early on would really be helpful. But I think it's hard because a lot of times we don't think as much of ourselves. Like, why would it be envious of me? I got, and that's how I feel when I'm like, I've got like, oh no, they're envious of you because you can, like Dave, like you can go in and say hello and walk up to people with confidence and do all that, and they can't do that. So it's really important for us to have self-awareness about who we are in order to spot envy, I think, in another. They definitely leak it out though, and it doesn't go anywhere good from there.
Dave,
Yeah.
since the breakup with this situation, since that breakup, how do you feel? How's life worked out for you since that time?
Well, I mean, things have worked out well because I founded this podcast company and I'm doing very well. But I admit it's a wound that I don't think will ever completely heal. And I say to myself, sheesh, it's been years. Move on. But I still think about it sometimes. And I do wonder whether I could have done anything differently. And I'm just not sure. I guess in true honesty, in hindsight, I should have made plans to leave, months earlier before the whole thing blew up. I shouldn't have been just telling myself, oh, everything's going to be fine, but getting stung like that it's a blow to your confidence, and confidence is everything,
Yeah.
And so,
it's a blow to your confidence in not just yourself. It's a blow to your confidence in mankind, in human beings.
right. Yeah.
And I don't think it's a bad thing that you carry it with you, because in some sense, it keeps your eyes wide open that it could happen again. And these are the scars and the cuts that we get in life that hopefully we leverage. Now you could go, the other way and say, I'm just not going to trust anybody. And people do that and get really paranoid. But now you have I trust you, but I also have my eyes open.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's I think that's a healthier way of looking at it, because, in the time that I struggled over this, just kind of trying to make sense of it, you have the ability or the possibility of falling into just anger and just becoming bitter.
Yeah.
And because that's just natural. What the hell? Why? I still can't get over why that guy did. Well, I mean, having your eyes open. It wasn't
personal. I can tell you that much. You were nothing but a stepping stone for him. But
yeah, and it's sad, but it's. I think you're right, Robin, in that take it as a lesson to keep your eyes open, but seeing danger around every corner is no way to live your life.
No.
So sometimes I say, everybody takes their lumps here and there. Right. And it doesn't mean everyone in the world is horrible, right?
No, it's like 1 out of 10 people, though.
Yeah.
So
well, that sounds about right. Yeah, it does.
There is a significant difference, if we put this on a spectrum, between at one end being paranoid that it could ever happen again, and what did I do, and this was awful, and all of that, and then on the other end of the spectrum, the word trust. I fully trust. Oh, I'm okay. Everything, he wouldn't do this, or that would never happen to me. So we've got the dichotomy between paranoia and trust. So the point is to not live in either one of those extremes, but to live somewhere in the middle, which we call guarded. So you are guarded, meaning that you learned from the mistake that not mistake, but the experience that you had. And on the other hand, you're never going to fall for it again. You're not just going to be automatically trusting of everything and everybody and so forth. So being guarded is not a bad thing. So what's happened since that time? Here you go. You got your own network. You're your own boss now. And there's a positive outcome to all of what you have learned. If you see it as a learning experience, just like, anything else, I learned how to do this. And from now on, I will do that instead of this. And I think you can congratulate yourself for getting this new business up and running and doing successfully with it.
Thank you. It's maybe a cynical way of looking at this, that the solution was just to never work for anyone else again.
Could be.
Could
be.
But
yeah.
but
okay.
if I'm now at a place where I'm a business owner for the first time and running my company. It's exciting. It's nerve-wracking, but there is that relief that my fate isn't upon the whims of someone that might secretly hate me and want to get rid of me. So let me ask you guys this though, because I think if I were to do it again, one thing I could have done was just all along the way just check in with him and say, am I doing better? Just open that communication, because I think what happened was we both weren't speaking our real truths. I mean, he's the boss, so shame on him for handling it this way. But how many relationships in our life, because there are people I can think of where, not too many, but some, I see their name pop up, they're sending me an email, and I say to myself, God, I can't stand this guy. God, he's terrible. He's terrible. He's always arguing about something that I don't care about. And yet sometimes we just go on and we sort of live with that relationship without telling them. Now, there are a bunch of things that if you think someone smells bad, or they're an awkward person and you think they're a loser, that's probably not healthy just to tell them to their face. But how many relationships do we have where we really think something different of the person that we're not letting them know? Does that question make sense?
Yes. You're wondering, like, do we owe it to them to help them?
And it all depends on the circumstances, right? But sometimes I think we do ourselves a disservice by staying silent, where, every time my sister-in-law comes over, she makes a comment about how the place is messy. Geez, I can't stand it. She's going to do it again. I know it. Now, and a lot of people who, I just made that up, right? But a lot of people who feel that way, well, might never tell them, might never reveal.
Oh, yeah, many people.
It's just comical to think that on your deathbed you might say, "Hey, and tell my sister-in-law Sally that I was so pissed that she always comes." But we carry it around, and in that weird example I just created, there probably is a tactful way to tell your sister-in-law, "Hey, you know what? We're doing our best to keep it clean over here, but we got 3 kids and 3 dogs, and if you wouldn't mind, take that in consideration before you make a little annoying snide comment." See, you wouldn't do that.
Then I would be direct and probably be perceived as rude. Dennis would be extremely diplomatic, I can tell you. It's everything's a trade-off.
Right.
Because of my directness, I don't get as much of that stuff from people because they know I'll give it back to them. So I don't get as much of that because I have that vibration around me. Like, bring it. You want to bring it? Be ready to roll, take you to the mat. So
yeah. And there are times where Dennis, since you can be grateful that she's on your team, there are the times there are times when you really need that approach, right? There are other times maybe, you don't want to be so,
where it makes something way worse that could have been not just a simple thing. And this is where we partner with each other, we help each other to see that. And I'm much more restrained now than I was in my younger years. But which approach, the key is it's not about us. It's not about us. It's about what is that listener, what's going to be most effective, not listener, but that person Annie Mae, who comes in and says this place is a filthy mess, what's going to land with her? What's going to be most
Right.
effective?
Exactly.
That's the way to approach it. Not what we want to do. Like, I want to scratch my itch and hit her right between her eyes. And then when she gets up, tell her, knock it off, But Dennis would probably say, oh, he'd say something so nice. She wouldn't even know that but she'd want to be nicer because he would do it in such a nice way.
That's Dennis's form of manipulation. It's just the nice kind of manipulation.
Yes, yeah, and there are very nice. Oh, yes, we had an episode
indeed.
About that. Yeah.
Nice. Everybody manipulates, tactic. Dave. This is something that we're aware of, and the typical example is, of course, when you make the kids go to bed early at Christmas because Santa Claus is coming. What are you doing? You're manipulating that kid. We all do it.
Oh, wait a minute. Are you trying to tell me that Santa doesn't?
Yeah, at some point you have to.
I sent my daughter to a Jewish day camp, and she got off the bus and she was furious. She said, none of those kids believe in Santa.
Like I wonder why. Yeah.
For us, the whole idea of manipulation for us, as we've written in the book and we talk about it on the show all the time, is that a true manipulator is someone who does it with nefarious intent.
Right.
So in other words, they don't care what happens to you as a result of this particular situation. They only care about gaining control over you, your behavior, your emotions, or whatever. They don't care about you. Now, when you do that, we all do it in some way or another, like telling the kids to get to bed early because of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's not nefarious. It's something to produce whatever we need at the moment so they can get the kids out of the way and get the presents wrapped or whatever. We don't mean it to be nasty to the kids per se. Manipulators do. They don't want you to succeed for whatever reason. They don't want you to be better than them. They don't want you to be out of their control. And so whatever he did and said or didn't do and say was nefarious. As it turned out, as you realized, he promised you were going to work, then 4 weeks later, he fires you. So nefarious intent is very much a part of the manipulation that we're dealing with folks, and there's plenty of that to go around. So we talked about, I mentioned earlier about the media while we have a few minutes left with you, Dave.
Well, you don't have a few minutes left.
No, that's okay. Yes, we do.
Okay.
We're going to do it.
But thank you.
Check.
I want to... because it's so much in the news as we're talking about in the world, not just here in our country, this whole idea of fake news, which says directly that the news is being manipulated by the media and the media, which is a big term, of course, but it means radio, television, print, and of course, do you have a view of that as a professional in the media? Do you feel embarrassed, angry? Do you see examples of that where news or programming is deliberately being manipulated for personal or nefarious reasons? Do you see that at all, Dave?
I don't think it's happened on a grand stage yet. Like we haven't, and it's coming, I think, but we haven't had the thing where there was the, I'm going to screw up her name, but the female politician who was getting a little too intimate with her date at the theater that night. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
I don't remember her name either, but
Boebert was her name.
There you go. Okay. So we could have had a moment where she said that was a fake video. That wasn't me. I wasn't there that night. And it wasn't, but something like that is going to happen in the future because the technology is advancing at really breakneck speed. And I don't know if you guys use ChatGPT, but
I do.
And right. And it really does keep getting smarter. There's almost an eerie, ominous feel about this, like the latest Mission Impossible movie, where there's some artificial intelligence computer virus that's churning on everyone and gathering all information. It is getting smarter.
Yeah,
but it is. And I'll give you just like a funny little example. I do a music podcast called Past Tens, a top 10 time machine. You can go to timemachinepod.com if you want to listen to that wonderful music podcast that I do with my buddy. But we were having a conversation about this song, and I can't remember what song it was, but after the show ended, I saw an ad on TV, and Shaquille O'Neal was in this ad, and Shaquille was singing the very song that we had talked about on the podcast. And I said to myself, geez, that would have been nice for me to play. That would have been funny. Like, here's Shaquille O'Neal doing the song. He's murdering it because he's supposed to, which is funny. We like to throw in a little funny little tidbits. Yeah. So I got an audio copy of that commercial, and then I faked a brief conversation between me and my podcast partner, where he said, "That's great. I love Shaq." Like, that was probably all I was able to construct. But after the show, after I posted the show, he said, "What the hell was that? I didn't say that." And I said I couldn't. That Shaq clip was too great. And on the previous podcast, you had talked about the song "Love Shack," so I just cut and pasted when you said Shaq, "Love Shack." You said I love Shaq. So these things are going to keep cropping up. I use an app called Descript, which I don't encourage anyone to use it for manipulative purposes, but I just called it up on my computer here. And there's a way to create your own AI voice. So this moment I typed in, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. By the way, I'm having a blast on Dennis and Robin's podcast. And let's see if it came up with something here.
The quick brown fox jumos over the lazy dog. By the way, I am having a blast on Dennis and Robin's podcast.
So if you type in, if you do a typo, that's why it said Junos instead of jumps. I mistyped that. But so that is my voice.
By the way, I am having a blast on Dennis and Robin's podcast.
That doesn't sound perfect, but that's my voice saying that. And so, the moment's coming, and I don't know. Yeah. There are all kinds of implications to this. There's a website called Suno, SUNO.com, that creates music, and you can type in, write a song about manipulation in the style of 1960s British rock group from Liverpool.
Oh no, not another time suck for me.
And it will, it is so much fun to play around with.
God.
In an instant, it will write a song about manipulation that sounds like it's the Beatles. You're not allowed to type in the Beatles because it'll say that's a copyright violation. But if you just say Liverpool rock group, the Suno knows what you're talking about. The record industry is suing Suno.com. So I'm playing with it as much as I can now. Oh
my God. You're taking me back to the Napster days. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It feels
get on that before they rip it down.
It feels like that moment, but it's not a slam dunk because it is creating original content. That's why I have a mixed feelings about it. And I play around with it, and it's a lot of fun. And it is creating something that didn't exist before, which in the podcast world is great because we're always looking for copyright free, like music we can use and things that aren't going to get us in trouble. If you create it with this tool, it is, in a matter of speaking, an original. The record companies are, and the music industry is worried because one day there's going to be a hit song that was created by a robot. There just will. And so I'm not sure. I have mixed feelings about it. I mean,
it's trade-offs. Nothing's all good or all bad. It's all trade-offs. And we know enough about human nature to know no matter what it is, that 10% is going to go in and find a way to use it for nefarious reasons.
Yeah.
How they roll.
Yeah. I mean, we see it now. That there was I happened to see a clip after the Cowboys played, as we record this yesterday, or Sunday, whatever it was. The Cowboys played and they played terrible, and they lost. And there's a viral clip of Dak Prescott, the Cowboys quarterback, standing at the press conference and saying, "We lost. It's on me. We played terrible, but you know what? I make millions of dollars. So what the hell do I care? I'm just going to keep showing up and putting on this uniform." And there's no way you would know that this was fake. Now, everyone knows that it's fake because it's outrageous. You would never say something like that. But the moment's going to come where we get something in between,
Right. Yes.
It's
going to be nuanced, and you're not. Yep.
And maybe the person even doesn't remember that they didn't said that. You slip in something in the middle.
Exactly. And that's even worse, right?
Right.
Oh,
You change one word, maybe you change the whole meaning. And the person says, "Geez, I guess I misspoke."
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Moment's coming. That's so.
That's what the word nefarious is so much into our manipulation talk when we talk about it. So this is a deeper conversation than they have time for right now. But this is what you just described nefarious, or is it creative? Ooh.
Yeah, I know. Well, the funny video of him saying that he doesn't care and he makes $1 million and screw everybody. That's to me, yeah, that's fine. That's art.
Yeah.
That's content. That's parody.
Yeah.
And parody is actually protected under the Copyright Act. So
For now.
yeah.
I heard him say it, and I was taken by it. I thought, what? Well, he's being honest. Well, no, that can't be. I wasn't sure, and I'm a manipulation expert. I should have known, but no way.
Yeah.
The time is coming. You're right, Dave. Correct.
I mean, it's a great way to do the A/B test, where you test like, what if he said this or what if he said that, and see which thing gets the viral and which thing gets the notice. I mean, you could test different personalities and have plausible deniability and say, it wasn't me, it was AI.
Jeez, Robin, I didn't even think of that. I hope people in PR are using this. You could create two versions of a statement.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
How could they not be? I mean,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. Well, we
Brave
might
new
have
world.
to have you back again and talk more about more of this stuff, because that's I think that's fascinating.
Well, I think it generates a whole separate topic and definition or redefining of the word manipulation. And as we have more time in other get-togethers, we will talk about that, because it is here, it's coming, it's not going away. And is it nefarious or not? That will be the topic
that
for another
simple.
show.
I don't think it's that simple.
Well, let's find out.
And that's part of the problem, right? Is the gray areas. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's part of the fun. If you ask me, that's what makes life interesting and exciting. And everybody always wants to paint it like doom and gloom, but I'm like, oh, this is the Wild West.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. By the way, this wasn't me talking the entire time on this podcast. It's been
there you go.
AI Dave, Robot Dave. Be nice to the robots, by the way, because when they take over, I keep telling Alexa how great she is. Alexa, I love you. You're the best. When they take over, I just want that on the record.
All right, not surprising.
She's not loving you back, Dave. So sorry. She's not the next.
Well, the one thing that is eminent for us is that the old clock on the wall tells it's time to move along. We've done our period for today, and we've raised enough questions that absolutely deserve another opportunity to talk with you, Dave. Would you be kind enough to come back one day and we'll talk about AI as a manipulative tactic? Could we do that with you
I'd be delighted anytime. If I'm not available, I'll send my clone Dave.
There you go. Okay, here we go.
Send your avatar.
All right. Here we go. All right. Well, we want to say thank you so much, David Yas, for coming in today. This has been a terrific opportunity to talk about manipulation from the perspective that you see it, and from the perspective that you see it coming. We'll be happy to have you back at some point. So thank you, David, for coming in. And Robin, any last words for you before we sign away?
Nope.
Okay, well, that's good for you. Thank you. That's a one-word answer from Robin. That's it. I think that was Robin speaking anyway. I can't tell anymore. But this is real. I'm Dr. Dennis Becker, and I want to thank you all for joining us today and listening to us talk about this topic. Manipulation, isn't it fun? In one way or another, we're doing it every time you're here. So thanks to my colleague, Robin Golinski, and our special guest, David Yas today. I am Dr. Dennis Becker. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.